Switching from a Linux desktop like GNOME or KDE to macOS can be interesting. Both systems share UNIX roots, but Apple's design philosophy often leaves Linux users feeling impressed, frustrated, or a bit of both. I primarily use Linux as my daily driver, but I also have an M-series MacBook Air that I use a few times a week. macOS is built on a Unix foundation, so the terminal feels familiar right away. Commands like ls, grep, ssh, and top work just as you'd expect. You get zsh by default with bash as an option, and Homebrew serves as a solid package manager, kind of like apt, dnf, or pacman. That said, Homebrew is mostly used for command line tools rather than full desktop apps. Without diving too deep, macOS is quite secure out of the box. The Secure Enclave works like a TPM, and system changes typically require admin elevation, just like Linux. It uses Unix-style permissions, which should also feel familiar. Most security settings are hidden behind GUI menus. That can be good or bad depending on your perspective. It keeps casual users from breaking things, but it can make certain tasks a bit of a chore. For example, installing pCloud, which is a Dropbox-style cloud storage app, on Linux or Windows is pretty seamless. On macOS, it's a bit more involved. Take a look. So the pCloud application would be considered a service in Windows or Linux. In Apple, it's set up as a system extension. So you have to get through a little bit of rigmarole to get it to actually work properly. So the app is installed. You have to go to Enable Drive. A notification will prompt you to enable the system extension. Then you open the system settings, and for Silicon Mac users like I am, shut down your Mac and enter recovery mode. So you have to do that. Select your username, put in your password, go into Utilities and go to Start Up Security Utility. Enter your password again, select your disk, and then allow user management of kernel extensions from identified developers. Password again. Restart your Mac from the Apple menu. So you can see that the drive is running up here. This is the icon I'm pointing to. And normally there'd be when you click on the menu, there'd be an option to enable the drive. I already did that when it's, just a moment ago. But you would have to do that. It starts automatically, but it doesn't enable the drive automatically. So your drive is there, but if you want to actually use it, you have to enable it, which I already have done. If you are used to KDE's hyper-customizable environment, or GNOME's minimalism, macOS might feel more like GNOME. Clean, consistent, and a bit locked down. You can't freely move the dock, just left, right, or bottom, and system theming is basically limited to light or dark mode. KDE users may find this really restrictive, but the trade-off is polish. Apple's tight control means most apps follow the same design language and behave predictably. This is an area where Linux often comes out ahead. GNOME and KDE both support tiling on advanced virtual desktops. macOS has spaces for virtual desktops, but managing windows across them can be a little awkward, at least for me. There's no native dynamic tiling, and even maximizing a window isn't straightforward. Clicking the green button, which you would think would be maximized, throws the app into full screen, hiding the dock and menu bar. For more traditional snapping, you'll need third-party tools like Rectangle. It's a bit like using GNOME extensions. You get the behavior you want, but you're patching in what probably should be core features. I don't use multiple physical displays in either Linux or macOS, so can't really speak to that, other than to say I get the impression that both are okay, but not flawless. On the plus side, mission control and trackpad gestures offer slick ways to switch between apps and virtual desktops. macOS uses a different set of shortcuts, and Apple uses a slightly different physical keyboard layout. For me, this was the biggest single adjustment in moving to macOS. It really threw off my muscle memory, and it took about a week or so before I felt remotely productive with macOS. As far as I know, macOS has always used a global menu bar. The menu appears at the top of the screen rather than in the app window. KDE offers something similar for its own apps, so this concept isn't totally foreign. It generally works well, but I still occasionally find myself clicking back into the window just to access the right menu items. Linux users are used to package managers and centralized repositories. Flatpaks, snaps, and app images are changing the game a bit, but the concept of trusted system-wide sources still holds. macOS leans heavily on the App Store and direct downloads from vendor websites. Installing apps often means dragging the .app file into the applications folder, a simple process, although it may feel kind of weird at first. Homebrew helps fill the CLI gap and can even install some GUI apps. It's an interesting bridge for Linux users who want more control. macOS can be a mildly jarring experience for Linux desktop users. Its Unix-based, polished UI and excellent hardware integration are definite strengths. But if you're coming from a world of deep customization, dynamic window management, and package-managed software, expect a bit of a learning curve, and probably a few extra tools to make it feel more like home. Any other Linux users out there dabble in macOS? Let me know what you think in the comments. Take care. So that's another video in the can. If you found this informative or interesting, please consider liking and subscribing down below. And remember, be excellent to each other.